There's a feeling every PC gamer knows. You open a game, go into the settings, and instead of leaving everything on low just to survive, you actually move the slider up, maybe all the way, and the game just runs. That feeling, for an entire generation of PC gamers, started with a GTX card. Today we're going through every single one, what they were, what they changed, and why some of them became genuinely legendary. Let's get into it. GeForce GTX 260. We start in 2008. PC gaming was at a turning point. Games were getting more demanding, players were getting more serious, and older GPUs were starting to feel the strain. The GTX 260 was Nvidia's answer to that moment. Built on the Tesla architecture, it brought advanced shader-based graphics into mainstream gaming PCs for the first time in a real, accessible way. Crisis. To Call of Duty, World at War, Far Cry 2. If you were playing those titles in 2008, you know exactly how much better they looked on hardware like this. Smoother frame rates, proper lighting effects, environments that finally matched what the trailers promised. For a lot of players, the GTX 260 was the first card that made PC gaming feel like it had actually arrived. GeForce GTX 280. Also launched in 2008, the GTX 280 sat above the GTX 260 as Nvidia's absolute flagship, and it made sure you knew it. More processing cores, wider memory bandwidth, and the raw ability to push through complex scenes that would bring anything else to a crawl. Grand Theft Auto 4, Crisis Warhead, Fallout 3, the GTX 280 ran them at higher resolutions with graphical settings that enthusiasts had been dreaming about. If you were building a serious custom desktop in 2008 and money wasn't the first question you asked, this was the card you put in it. It was the top of the mountain, and for a while nothing else came close. GeForce GTX 460. 2 years passed, and in 2010, Nvidia introduced the Fermi architecture. And with it, one of the most beloved mid-range cards they ever made. The GTX 460 wasn't the most powerful card on the shelf. It didn't need to be. What it offered was something arguably more valuable. A genuinely smart balance between price and performance. DirectX 11 support meant better shadows, better water effects, better lighting, and games like Battlefield, Bad Company 2, StarCraft 2, and Metro 2033 ran on it without asking you to drain your bank account first. It became the card that forums recommended to almost everyone. Was the card that filled more budget gaming builds than almost anything else in its generation. Some cards are remembered for being the best. The GTX 460 is remembered for being the right one. GeForce GTX 480. If the 460 was the smart choice, the GTX 480 was the powerful one, and it made absolutely no apologies about it. Nvidia's Fermi flagship arrived in 2010 with more CUDA cores, greater computing ability, and enough raw strength to handle The Witcher 2, Battlefield 3, and Metro 2033 at settings that felt almost unreasonable for the time. But there was a catch, and if you ever owned one, you already know exactly what it was. This card ran hot, not just warm, genuinely, notoriously, legendarily hot. Powerful cooling systems weren't optional. They were survival equipment. Your electricity bill noticed. Your PC case noticed. Your room in winter, though? That was a different story. The GTX 480 was a beast, just one that needed careful handling. GeForce GTX 560. A year later, in 2011, the GTX 560 arrived as Nvidia's refinement of everything Fermi had started. Same architecture, but smoother, more efficient, better stability for everyday use. This was the year Skyrim launched, the year Portal 2 dropped, Batman, Arkham City. The GTX 560 handled all of it without the drama that came with its flagship sibling. No extreme heat, no punishing power draw, just reliable performance for players who wanted to game without managing their hardware like a science experiment. Compared to the GTX 460, the improvements were real and noticeable. Steadier frame rates, cleaner operation, and the kind of quiet confidence that makes a GPU easy to recommend. Not every great card needs to be extreme. Sometimes doing the job well, consistently, is enough. GeForce GTX 660. 2012 brought a new architecture, the Kepler, and the GTX 660 was how it introduced itself to mid-range gaming PCs. Where Fermi had chased power, Kepler chased efficiency, and the difference was immediately obvious. The GTX 660 could run Tomb Raider, Borderlands 2 and Far Cry 3 at 1080 with solid frame rates, and it did it without sounding like a turbine. Gamers upgrading from the GTX 460 noticed it right away, not just in the performance bump, but in how much quieter and cooler everything ran. That thermal improvement wasn't a small thing. It meant smaller cases, quieter setups, shocks in gaming PCs that didn't demand to be the loudest thing in the room. The GTX 660 proved that getting better didn't always mean getting louder. GeForce GTX 760. By 2013, Kepler had fully hit its stride, and the GTX 760 showed what that architecture was capable of with more room to breathe. More CUDA cores than the 660, faster memory speeds, and a price that still made sense for mid-range builders. Battlefield 4, BioShock Infinite, Assassin's Creed 4, Black Flag, the GTX 760 ran all of them at high settings, and it became one of the default answers whenever someone asked what to put in a reliable 1080p gaming build. Comment sections from that era are full of it. Forum recommendation threads from that era are full of it. It was the kind of card that quietly showed up everywhere because it earned its place. Performance you could trust, at a price you could actually justify. GeForce GTX 970, 2014. This is where things get genuinely important. The GTX 970 isn't just a good graphics card. It's one of the most significant GPUs Nvidia ever released, and the PC gaming community knows it. Maxwell architecture brought something the market had been waiting for: real performance without the power bill to match. The Witcher 3, Grand Theft Auto 5, Overwatch. The GTX 970 ran them at high settings and handled 1080p like it wasn't even trying. Push it and it could manage 1440p too. If you were building a gaming PC in 2014 or 2015, there's a real chance this card was in your system. And if it was, you probably remember exactly how it felt to realize you didn't have to compromise anymore. The 970 wasn't just popular, it was everywhere. And it earned every bit of that reputation. GeForce GTX 980. Launching alongside the 970, the GTX 980 was Maxwell's flagship for the players who wanted everything the 970 offered, and then some. More CUDA cores, higher clock speeds, and enough rendering power to make Shadow of Mordor, The Witcher 3, and Rise of the Tomb Raider look as good as they possibly could. But what made the 980 genuinely notable beyond raw performance was its role in early VR. The Oculus Rift was coming, the HTC Vive was coming, and the GTX 980 was one of the first consumer graphics cards that could actually handle that experience without dropping frames at the exact moment you needed it most. For enthusiasts who wanted to be on the leading edge of where gaming was going, the 980 was the card that got them there. GeForce GTX 1060. 2016, Pascal arrived and PC gaming changed again. The GTX 1060 became, almost immediately, one of the most widely used gaming GPU on the planet, and it's not hard to understand why. Strong 1080p performance, affordable price, and power consumption that finally made sense for the real world. Fortnite, PUBG, Overwatch, The Witcher 3, all of them running smoothly, all of them looking great, without needing a power supply the size of a microwave to pull it off. It worked in compact builds, budget builds, and first-time PC builds. It was the card that said you didn't need to spend a fortune to have a great gaming setup. For an entire generation of new PC gamers, the GTX 1060 was the card that opened the door. GeForce GTX 1070. Step up from the 1060 and you found the GTX 1070, Pascal's answer for players who wanted more headroom without going all the way to flagship prices. More CUDA cores, larger memory, and enough performance to make 1440p gaming feel natural rather than ambitious. Battlefield 1, Doom 2016, Red Dead Redemption 2. The 1070 handled them at very high settings with room to spare. It also supported VR properly, making the HTC Vive experience what it was actually designed to be, rather than a technical compromise. For high-performance builds that didn't want to pay the top-of-the-line tax, the GTX 1070 was one of the best answers Nvidia ever gave. GeForce GTX 1080, and then there was the GTX 1080. The peak. The last great statement from a lineup that had defined PC gaming for nearly a decade. Released in 2016, the GTX 1080 took everything Pascal had built and pushed it as far as it could go. Assassin's Creed Origins, Destiny 2, Shadow of the Tomb Raider at higher ultra settings, this card handled them without flinching. 1440p was effortless. 4K gaming was no longer a benchmark slide. It was something real people could actually do. For enthusiasts who wanted maximum graphical power without waiting for the next generation, the GTX 1080 was the answer. It marked the absolute ceiling of what the GTX era could deliver. In 2018, Nvidia retired the GTX name entirely. What came next could do things no graphics card had done before. But that's a different story and a different video. The GTX lineup ran for nearly a decade. It took PC gaming from struggles at 720p to 4K experiences that felt like the future. And if any of these cards ever sat in your build, you already know exactly what that era meant.